Surprise! You get to see me in all my glory this time rather than just audio. I'm trying something new. After all, this is YouTube. And I'll be really interested to know what you think. Do you prefer the video? Anyway, this week I have very much had enough of it. That is everything. I've spent a good chunk of my career nodding along politely when brand guidelines have told me to do really stupid things and I've just had enough. Extensive use of all caps, color combinations that are unreadable, and a complete lack of visual hierarchy in typography. I've seen all kinds of horrors, and for a long time I just went along with it all because questioning the brand felt a bit like questioning how pretty somebody's child was. Lately, though, I've just run out of patience because I keep meeting people who are using brand as a reason not to change anything at all about their design. The logo is sacred, the colors are locked, the fonts have come down from on high, and so cannot be changed and are written on stone tablets. So the brand ends up quietly undermining the business, and yet it's completely untouched because nobody wants to open that particular Pandora's box of a complete redesign. Don't get me wrong. I know that branding matters. Getting the visual identity right can shape whether an organization sinks or swims. And I'm not one of those people who think that design is decoration that you sprinkle on at the end of a project. But a good brand needs to earn its keep. It has to work in the real world, on a real phone, for a real person squinting at a screen in bright sunlight. Looking pretty isn't the job. The job is to look pretty while also being legible, scannable, accessible, compelling, and all of those things that actually matter. This is where a lot of brands fall down because some designer will pick a color palette in a quiet studio on a lovely big monitor and it looks gorgeous. But when it hits your website, where it has to convince a distracted human to actually do something, the whole thing starts to fall apart. Most branding, you see, is seen online, and that's where the majority of people will meet a brand. Yet most branding agencies I come across still approach things from a print mindset. They're not approaching things from a digital first mindset. Oh, sure, they'll tell you that they know about digital. They might even include the odd mock-up for a website or a social media platform, but they're not specialists in usability or conversion, and the gaps in their knowledge, although impressive in a mock-up, shine through. They design for the brochure, the business card, the launch presentation. The website is treated just as one other place that the logo goes, but the website's interactive. So you get half-baked text that's baked into images, or type that's beautiful at poster sizes but unreadable on a mobile, or palettes that look confident on a wall and washed out on the screen. It's really a slightly depressing way to build something that lives mostly online. So what does this actually cost you? I've had 2 clients recently where their visual branding was genuinely not fit for purpose. In one case, it failed on accessibility. It didn't just flunk the legal tests. It let people down in a much more fundamental way. They couldn't read what was there. In the other, brand was all over the place. It started life maybe as a decent identity, but years of inconsistent use had distorted it beyond recognition, and different rules on every different page with no hierarchy and nothing to guide the eye. It was essentially all over the place, but people were too afraid to touch it. The symptoms are always familiar. Excessive use of capital letters, which is shown to cut readability by 20%. And then there's color combinations that make the body copy hard to read. And there's often a lack of typographic hierarchy, so headlines and sections end up blurring together. A lack of visual containers, so the whole page becomes a soup of elements with nothing to really draw the attention in any particular direction. None of these things individually feel like a disaster, but they stack up and you end up getting pages that quietly repel the very people that they're sent to attract. Clients don't always take my word for this either, which I guess is fair enough. I'm not perfect. So recently I ran 2 versions of a homepage through an AI attention tool that predicted where people will look, the current brand compliant design and a tweaked version of my own. The numbers were uncomfortable for the brand identity that currently existed on the website, with clarity and focus both climbing by around 20% on my new version. And predicted engagement on the main call to action jumped by more than 80%, just with a few tweaks to the design. Same content, same offer. The only real difference was loosening the grip of the brand that was fighting the reader instead of helping them. That's the conversation I would encourage you to have. Not the, is the brand sacred, but is the brand costing us more than it's benefiting us? At some point, you have to decide what matters more, honoring a set of brand assets that are never designed for the web, or actually converting the people that land on your website. So what do you do about all of this? Well, you don't need to burn your brand to the ground. That's rarely the answer, and it's rarely on the table anyway. You start small. Look at where the brand and basic readability are openly at war. Look for restrictive layouts, poor image choice, low contrast text, headlines that fall apart and don't stand out enough from the body copy. Fix those first, and you'll usually claw back most of the benefits without getting into a complete redesign exercise. Then you might want to push to a slightly braver conversation and ask whether the brand was really designed for screens in the first place, or whether it's been retrofitted onto it. If the honest answer is the second one, you've got a case for a proper digital first refresh rather than another round of polishing something that doesn't really work. And if you're the one clutching hold of the brand like a holy relic, I would gently suggest having a word with yourself. I've been that person, I get it. The brand, however, is meant to serve the business, not the other way round. The moment it starts costing you customers, it's stopped doing its job, however nicely it looks in a style guide.